Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
Well, actually, I live in Delaware now, so does that make me a Delawarean?
Sing it, girl.
You know, Beyonce is my friend in my head. They my people sometimes, too.
Yeah. I mean, be true, man.
You know, when I was a kid, I had an imaginary enemy. Like, does that make me crazy?
Does that make me crazy?
Life as P, presented by Say What Radio.
Hey, what's up? What's going on? It's Life as P. I'm your host, Phoenix Ash. Things are a bit different with COVID-19. Just energy is different. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Really looking at what's going on. If this is the first time you're joining me, thank you. I appreciate it. I wish I could be more energetic. But days have been long. Worry has been strong. I have family in New York where it seems to be a lot worse or a lot more cases going on than where I'm at, and just really being concerned with how we are managing. Not how are we going to manage, because I'm never in a space of, oh my God, how are we going to do this? I'm more so in a space of just planning and figuring things out. And sometimes that takes a lot of my energy. One of the things that, and if you're a repeat listener, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I forgot to say, I love you. Thank you so much for checking in with me. But one of the things that has been heavy on my mind is sometimes I go back and forth between writing full time and picking up a contract job or getting a full-time job so that I could supplement my income and make sure that the bills are paid and me and my daughter is okay. And this whole situation just really reaffirmed how important it is that when you are planning to take that leap of faith, to start that business, to invest in your passion, please don't forget to include health insurance in that plan. I know a lot of times when we are taking those leaps of faith and we're following our passion, we're becoming full-time authors, we are deciding to go back to school, quit our jobs for a while so that we could focus on this one particular thing. And it's great. You have this money budgeted. When I left corporate a couple years ago, I had this whole thing planned out. So I thought I had money saved and I had money gifted to me. I budgeted it. I thought I had enough money for 6 months to be home and try to figure something out. And I really was able to stretch it and do projects that allowed me to push it further out past a year. So that was excellent for me. But I didn't have a solid plan for health insurance. And I'm so thankful, so happy that I wasn't going through that at the time when there was a pandemic in the country that I live in, because I just don't know if I would have been able to create. I don't know if I'd have been able to be well. And I'm a true believer that worry sort of opens you up to more infectious diseases, breaks down your immune system. I just believe that all of these things within you work together. And when they crumble, that more than one thing within you will crumble with it. But please don't forget to plan for your health insurance. I mean, when I was out of work, I could not take for granted that I was going to get Medicaid. And I was foolish enough to believe that I could take that for granted. Medicaid wasn't trying to fool with me at all. At the time, me and my daughter's father was still together. It was like, there's too much money. And it wasn't enough money, at least from where we were standing. It wasn't enough money. But they were like, there's too much money in your household for you to get Medicaid. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it just wasn't. It just wasn't happening. Taken for granted. They'll see I'm on unemployment. They were saying my unemployment check was too high. Like, I couldn't get covered, and I had to fight for it. I had to fight for my daughter's coverage. And finally, by the time they gave it to me, they had to backdate it 3 months because I was fighting for it for so long. I could not take it for granted. And when I look back at that time and I compare it to now, and I just think to myself, like, that was a hard lesson to learn, that when I'm planning, I need to plan for the health insurance too. It's not just I have enough money budgeted to pay my portion of the bills and we'll be fine. We'll make it through until this thing takes over and gets bigger, and then we'll be on track. I have to make that part of the initial plan, not just that one time, but every time. Even when taking on jobs, you can't settle for, oh, my benefits don't kick in for 6 months, or my benefits don't kick in for a year. There really isn't room to settle for that. And there's so many places that I hope, based upon what's going on in the United States, or even around the world rather, that they would change those policies, because you have people coming in working all kinds of hours. How dare you have them working for you for a year and you not offer any kind of shared benefit other than a paycheck? Like, just be lucky I'm paying you, particularly when those people are full-time. Together, we have to do better individually as well as to keep one another. We need to do better. But it just really reaffirmed, like I said, how important it is to make sure that you're planning for your health coverage. Because, like, what you gonna do? You need not die because you couldn't be tended to, because you didn't have coverage, or you didn't have the $100 or the $200 that it would take for you to go to urgent care or whatever. And I feel so bad for people who can't even really make the end meet. And programs like Medicaid are turning them away and telling them that there's too much money in their household. We have to figure out better guidelines. When you look at the guidelines for Medicaid, food stamps and all of that, you know, people make fun of people who are on food stamps and they say, oh, they take advantage of the system, or, oh, they are embellishing what it is that they need. And first of all, have you ever been through the system to get Medicaid, to get food stamps, to get welfare? If you've ever been through the system, you will know that that is the wackest hustle, okay? Because the amount of time that they have you sitting in those offices, the amount of times that you have to go back to reaffirm information that they already have, the amount of money you have to not have in order for them to approve the little piece of something they're going to give you. Think, oh, this person get hundreds of dollars in food stamps. That also means that that person does not get hundreds of dollars in income for the most part. If you are able to get hundreds of dollars every month for, why you think people started selling them food stamps? Not because they was like, I'm tricking the system, because they was trying to increase. They was trying to hustle it because it wasn't enough. And how do I double it? How do I triple it? How do I make it look like something else? And the sad thing is, it's like, you know, honestly, if you could possibly get a job, you would spend less hours getting that same money. You really would, because I've been in a Medicaid office. I've been in a welfare office. I've been there to get food stamps, and you in there all day, all day. I remember one time I was applying for food stamps. I wasn't working, nothing. At the time, I didn't have my daughter, so it was just me and her father at the time. And they gave me $70. And then they wrote me a letter and said that they did a review and they was reducing me to $35. And then 2 weeks after I got the letter for the $35, they reduced me to $14. What? $14 a month in assistance? Like, how could anybody, like, what? Why is that even a thing? $14? $14. I was like, all right, we about to have 2 subs and that's it. Like, $14. We ramen for 2 weeks. If I want it with chicken, I'm done. $14, like, that's crazy. But there's people who got to deal with that. So I say all that to say is that Not that you shouldn't take that leap of faith or that you shouldn't open up that business or you shouldn't pursue your passion. I absolutely believe even more now that you should do that, because you can't rely. Look at all these companies who are closing. Look at all these people who have lost their jobs. Restaurants who can only serve pickup or takeout. How many servers had to get let go? And they weren't let go with the promise of, I'm going to rehire you. Look how many people is like, yo, it's a done deal for me. Or people who worked for businesses that centered around physically interacting with people. Like, for a lot of people, it's a done deal. They got to find some other means of creating income for themselves. So I absolutely believe, yes, follow your passion. And if you can figure out a way to have multiple streams of income, definitely do it. Because when one shuts down, you want to still be able to make your ends meet while you're figuring out how to supplement the one that's shut down. What I'm saying is that your plan has to be tighter. At least for me, this is the message that I'm receiving, is that my plan has to be tighter. It can't be so loose. I'm good for a loose plan. I can't even lie to you guys. I'm good for a loose plan. Like, I kind of got a picture or whatever, but can't always articulate it, can't always tell you the specifics, the details. In some areas, I'm detail oriented. In other areas, I'm very big picturesque. And so it's hard. I praise the Lord for anybody who has to work with me, people who help me with my branding, who help me with doing ads for my books and advertising my books and stuff like that. God bless them, because my vision ain't always articulated in the clearest way. It's not always articulated with the details in mind or the specifics. My podcast producer, she's been dealing with me for years with my obscurity and my kind of, sort of like, in a way, this is what I kind of mean, or how easily distracted I get, or how wrapped up in what's going on with myself that I sometimes forget the things that I've promised to do. I mean, I started when I was an executive assistant. I used to make lists all the time, right? I would come in the morning. I would write a list of everything that I'm supposed to do for the day. And throughout the day, things would get added to that list. And I would check each one of them off as they were done. And then at the end of the day, I would make a new list for the next day. And so whatever needed to be carried over to the next day would start my next list. And then when I came in the morning, I would add to it. And so I was great at that, but I wasn't employing those skills at home and anywhere else in my life. And just one day I just woke up and was like, duh, you need to make lists, because there are things in your home that's not getting done. Because when the time comes, you're really like forgetting about it. Something else that's in your face gets your attention and it's out the window. For years, I would hate the color of my living room wall. Not that, I moved into a house and it had a bad color. We moved into the house and we were so excited that we were never able to put paint on the walls in places that we rented that I went crazy with the colors. And I was like, oh, I love this blueberry blue. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. I put it on walls and I was in love with it for like 2-3 years. But here come year 6. And I'm like, yo, it's mad dark in here. It's so dark. Or I'm looking at moods of, there are quite a few people in my life who suffer from anxiety and depression, and really paying attention to their moods when they're in those rooms, or how they're being affected, or even how, as they walk in, it's kind of dark. You mind if I open a window or turn every light in here on? Just really paying attention to that. And I never wanted to be someplace that depressed anyone. And so I'll be like, I'm going to change the color in here. I'm going to get it painted. And it was years until I started keeping a list of what things I needed to do around the house. That is when things started happening. I had a refrigerator that was on its last leg for about 3 years. No, 2 years. It was like it went through 2 summers of struggle. Okay. Every time there was too much air running in the house, or if it got too hot in the summertime, the refrigerator would cut off. Nothing else in the house would cut off, but the refrigerator would cut off. And you'd have to go to the fuse box for the refrigerator. And it was like that for 2 summers. And not even because like we didn't put the money aside to plan for it, to buy it, whatever. It's just nobody made a real plan for it. Nobody sat down and said, okay, we need a refrigerator. This is how much money we're going to save every month to put towards that. It didn't happen. And it was like, oh, I want new curtains, or I don't want this, I want that, whatever. And it's like little by little, you chipping away at the money that could have went to this major thing that you absolutely need, but wasn't making a plan. So I realized for me, for my mind, for my productivity, I need to make a list. And I'm still not the best at doing this in my personal life. I still have to go through weeks upon weeks where I have to remind myself, you know what? You never got such and such, or you never did such and such because you never made a list. It started to be the way that I wrote books and how I carry out a story is that, you know, when I'm stuck, I need to write a list of what needs to happen. How do I see this story playing out? And I guess you could consider it like a loose outline, but it was really like, what are the bullet points? Like, what still needs to happen? Not how am I going to get there, but just like what major things still need to happen so that I don't lose sight of it. That's just how my mind works. You got to figure out how your mind works, but the plan has to be tighter. And I think with the list, that helps me make a tighter plan. But this whole situation is just really, like I said, reaffirming to me that I have to make a tighter plan because it's imperative that I have health insurance. It's not a question. My daughter needs health insurance, period. That's it. So if that means that it's going to take me 30 years before I'm free of being obliged to help someone else with their dream while I work on mine, then that's what it means, because I have to make a tighter plan. If that means that I go harder in my passion so that it yields the type of income that will allow me to freely pay for health insurance for my daughter and I without blinking an eye, then that's what it means. And it might mean all of that. And I have to be okay with that because I'm so thankful, so grateful that I'm insured. I'm like, oh my God, thank God. Yo, seriously, like I be sitting in my bed sometimes just really worrying about like, wow, what if someone doesn't have health insurance? And then on top of that, they don't have health insurance and they don't have the ability to isolate, to quarantine. Like, what about homeless people? Where are they going? What's happening to help avoid them getting sick while they're bunched together in a shelter? All those things run through my mind. I'm like, I be stressing myself out because I mean, like, what is happening? And I know that we're not the first generation to live through a scary time. We're not the first generation to live through terrifying times or times of uncertainty. We're not the first generation to deal with stock markets crashing. We're not. So I'm definitely not the person who's like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I can't believe we're living in this time. I feel like every generation gets one. So I'm definitely not the person to be like, yo, the world's crumbling, it's falling apart. I do believe it will not be the same. However, I cannot particularly foresee how. I don't know what everything is going to look like when it's over. I don't know. What I do know is what I need to look like when it's over. And that's someone with a tighter plan. And that's like, for real. I need the plan needs details. The plan needs coverage. The plan needs a list of things that I cannot live without, or I refuse to live without. Because I mean, in all honesty, you can, you know what I mean? But the plan needs to include those things I refuse to live without. And it probably needs to be more tighter than that. But I told you I have a difficult time with some details. Sometimes I don't know, stress myself out getting too nitty. But I need to tighten up for myself and for my child. You know, as a dreamer, as someone who I love, I'm romantic. I love the ideal situation. I love to think about how wonderful it would be to be in certain places, to do certain things, to have particular freedoms. I love that. And honestly, if my plan is tighter, I can probably accomplish that way sooner than I would if my plan isn't. And I know that I can be very fly by the seat. I'm a Sagittarius. I can fly by the seat of my pants and go with the flow and go with the universe. And to some degree, I don't think that I will totally get rid of that portion of me, because I do enjoy some portions of that, because it allows me to be flexible. It allows me to be able to stand in the face of adversity, because I can think straight. I don't get over emotional when things aren't going my way, or when things seem a little muddy and I can't see through them. I don't get over emotional, because I've learned over the years that clouds my vision. And if I just take my time and think about it and I face it and I look at it head on, then I can think a lot clearer and make a plan on how to not only overcome what's in front of me, but to thrive behind it. So when I'm hard on myself, or when I talk to myself and say, hey, you got to button up. Hey, you got to make some lists. Hey, you got to get it together. You got to stop avoiding certain details because you think it's so stressful. It's because I need to, at the bottom of it, just clear the vision. The vision sometimes gets a little blurry. It's not always clear. And sometimes we need to clear it up, particularly when you've made certain strides. I'm very proud of what I've done in the time that I've decided to pursue a career as a writer. In the few years that I've made the decision, I've published several books on my own. I've also been signed to a publisher and had some books published under my publisher. I've started this podcast. I've made a lot of good connections. I've changed what my circle looks like. I've changed the energy in my circle. All the things that I had set out to do, and I was intentional, I've been able to do. So now I'm at a different stage of the vision, and I need to clear it up some, because all those things I was clear about before, I accomplished. And so life is changing. The world is changing. And rather than trying to figure out or predict what it's going to look like, work on the thing that I can control. And that's what I look like, what I'm doing with me. So it's time to button up, make the plan, make sure insurance is in the plan. It reminds me of when we were purchasing our house. We had money for a down payment and got to closing and was paying for closing. But when I got the cost of what closing was going to be, I was like, damn, I wish I would have known closing was going to be so much money before we got into this, because maybe I would have planned to save an extra amount, or I would have lessened how much I put on my down payment to cover that, so I didn't have to do both, come out cash for both. And it was like a shocker. And then once I got into the house, it was like, okay, I wish somebody would have told me to put a savings account aside for the big ticket items that may go down. Or I wish somebody would have told me that although you have a home warranty, they're crap. Because it seemed like they send the worst technician who can't fix anything. I had this guy, he had to reschedule like 3 times. I don't even know why. He didn't fix anything. And then when he tried to tell me what was wrong with it, it was like outside of what the insurance will cover. And then they still wanted me to pay out of pocket when I paid less by just replacing the damn thing. So despite home insurance, I still needed to have some sort of nest egg that would allow me to cover certain things. And of course, now more than 10 years into it, I totally get these things, and I try to pass this knowledge down to people in my life who are just coming up on that point in their lives. But the vision wasn't clear. It wasn't clear. It was just, I'm going to do this thing. And I didn't really sit and think about, how are we going to do this thing? What are the things that need to happen? So it wasn't just about nobody told me. I didn't ask the right questions. And that's, again, with the button up, make the tighter plan, is when you make the list and when you ask yourself, what are the deal breakers? What are the things that I refuse to live without? What are the things that I think I need to get to the next level, or to pursue this, or to have enough money in order to give it a try, whatever. When we sit down and we truly think about the details, that's when the true questions that need to be asked, when those things come up. And so you may not have the answer, but you know to ask the question. And so you go research and you find who has the answer, and you get it, and you move on, and you take that knowledge and you make your stuff even tighter. It's time for that. For real, it's time for that. Okay, I'm going to stop lecturing you. Get off the soapbox for a second. I thank you so much for spending your time with me. I hope to God that you, your family, everybody that you know is safe. I pray that we all get through this time with little to no tragedy. My heart goes out to the families who have already suffered, who have already experienced tragedy and lost loved ones to not only what is going on with the pandemic, but to senseless crime. So all kind of things that we typically struggle with. I know with the pandemic going on, it makes everything seem heavier. It just exasperates everything. My heart goes out to people who have no choice but to go to work because they can't let their household income collapse, or because they work in an industry, a service industry that's deemed vital, and they just need to be there and don't have a choice, don't have sick days. My heart goes out to all of you. I pray for your ability to thrive on the other side of this, for real, yo. If you are quarantined and you need books to read, though, please look me up on Amazon. You can follow me, Phoenix Ash. I'm at P Writes on Twitter, at P Writes on Instagram. You can definitely listen to old episodes of the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We all over. Shout out to Say What Radio. Say what? My people, because that's the network. Yo, they gave me a chance. They invested in me. Whew. Lord, they did. They set it off. They invested in me, and then other people followed. They set it off, for real. They did. I think they might have, to some degree, invested in me before I invested in myself. So, word, we need people like that. But yeah, you want to read some books? I have my first romance novel. I always wanted to write one. I put it on my vision board, and look, I finally did it. So my first romance novel, Delectable, A Sweet Romance, is available on Amazon Books. It's available on Kindle. The paperback has a different cover than the Kindle, and I like it like that. I'm looking for a narrator. Oh, you know what? I think I have an audition to listen to. I'm looking for a narrator to do the audiobook, because I think it might be something that sounds a little nice on Audible. So yeah, let me know. You know what? Read Delectable. Let me know in the reviews if that's something that you want to hear on Audible. If you think it works for that, I'd be interested to know. Also, my books, Soil Sheets and Cookies and Crumbles, are both available on Amazon Books as well as Kindle. My first novel, In Her Makeup, is available on Amazon Books, Kindle, as well as Audible. So that one is available on Audible. Listen to that. Let me know what you think. Like, is that something that I continue to pursue? All right, guys. Until next time, when we can exchange our power. Peace. Be safe.